Here at Strength Coach Network, we pride ourselves on giving you the best quality information from strength and conditioning coaches and practitioners that still work with or have worked with athletes. This is not theory. We are always about giving you practical information that you can apply day one the minute you're done listening to this. And you can check us out for a $1 trial in the link down below. Click that link and find out more about us.
Like Coach, Justin, whatever you want to say, but I mean, I'm gonna call you Coach because like that's just a sign of respect to somebody that's older than me and been doing this longer. Like I don't know any other way than to say like it was even weird. Like when I worked with Rob Ambrose at Towson, right? It was like he was like, call me Rob, but it's just like, I mean, you're 50 years old, you're older than me, like I should be calling you Rob, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the way, I mean, being from the South, that's what, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, it's always coach, and now I feel like, I bumped into a kid in Walmart, and he was like, excuse me, OG, and I was like, oh, OG, oh, man, so I was like, all right, well, just sign of respect, like you said, but yeah, I haven't healed from being called OG.
Within that, I had, and our listeners have heard this story before a bunch of times, but as you're going through a lift group, you're talking with the athletes and you don't have to worry about the sets. And after a while, when you've been doing this, you understand your system and things are good to go. And you talk with athletes during the lift just to kind of see how they're doing. So I'm walking around, I see one of the guys and I'm like, hey, how you doing? He's like, oh, I'm good, Brody. How you doing? I was like, I just responded. You didn't mean I answered his question. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, coach. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was like, I responded to you. Like we were talking, right. I didn't take it as a sign of disrespect. Yeah. He's like, I know, I didn't call you coach. I was like, yeah, but Kobe, you could call me coach and mean it in a disrespectful way. And you could give me a high five and dap me up and call me Brody and mean it with the utmost respect. He's That's like, true. I never thought about it like that. He's like, I never thought about it like that. I was like, Kobe, you could be like, oh, okay, sounds good, coach. The word was coach, but it was still disrespect. You know what I mean? It's all in just, right. So welcome to the show, everybody. Talk about a tangent.
Absolutely. That's what we do. That's what we do in this business.
So kicking it off, you've had one of the most diverse paths in strength and conditioning, Major League Baseball, small college, D1, high school, now Wofford. Which of those experiences had the biggest impact on who you are today?
Oh, wow. That's a great question to start off. Right? Coming out hot.
Coming out the gate.
Yeah, I would say honestly, obviously we're the sum of our life experiences. So I would be remiss to say that, that one was more than the other, but I would say probably just because, the amount of hours, like time on task that I had would probably be Stillman. Because again, just for, obvious reasons, I was the only staff member. I was the only strength coach. So, and again, had the athletic department. I had a few people come in, a few students come in and, want to intern because I also taught a weightlifting class or a class in strength and conditioning while I was there. So, and that sparked a lot of interest, and people kind of, just like a lot of people, as you know, they want to stick their toe in the water, but when that water gets deep, they're like, what do you mean? I'm not getting paid to wake up at 4 a.m.? No. So it's all about experience. So yeah, I would definitely say Stillman, and mostly because again, like I always teach my interns and my staff that you never stop being an intern. So the things I learned as an intern, I had to do as Stillman because it was only on me. There was no such thing as not my job because that's exactly whose job it was. It was mine. And I even now, I've been blessed with, I got a staff. I have an associate, full-time associate, and then 2 paid interns, and who are full-time. And so it's a staff of 4 of us. And then occasionally, depending on the season, we have some interns coming in. But, I still carry that mentality. It's my job, so I'm, not so long ago, I was scrubbing toilets right during the summer. We had a little miscommunication with the janitors and stuff. I didn't wait, it needed to be done. I got it done. So nothing's beneath me or, above me to do. So I would definitely say probably Stillman.
Okay. And so anybody listening out there that is not aware, he built the first ever strength program at Stillman from scratch. This question is kind of teed up for one of my former colleagues, Logan, who's now down at Randolph, and he's starting the first ever program. Another former assistant of mine, Joe Alexander, he went off and he was at Hawkin College. And so we have listeners out there that are doing this. What did you learn from that process that still guides you today? And what's some words of encouragement or mentorship to those strength coaches that maybe feel like is there even light at the end of this tunnel right now?
It absolutely is. I think that those who've had that experience, you're getting a unique experience that majority of the coaches in this industry don't, and don't get get to experience. We building a program from the ground up. Number one, yes, obviously it's going to be difficult and there are going to be challenges, but there's a sense of pride, that once you leave, if you ever leave, if and when you leave, that you look back on the experience, the feedback that you get from the athletes years down the road. I was at Stillman in 2011 to 2014. And to this day, I still get, I'm still have relationships with those athletes. They've they're adults knocking on 30 plus now. And they are, their husband and their wives, their mothers and their fathers. And they still want, I remember this workout that we did, you think you still got it? Can you shoot it to me? Or, because, obviously, life changes, but, building those experiences, especially, again, hours, they absolutely suck and they're going to suck. I think it's very few. I think they're in the minority of strength coaches to say that they have great work hours. But the hours are going to suck building a program from the ground up, but it absolutely is worth it. At least it was for me. And at that time I was a glutton for punishment. I believed in the arbitrary 10,000 hour rule. You put those 10,000 hours there, you become a master of your craft. And I did, and I still want to be the absolute best strength coach in the country. Depending on who you ask, some say that I am, and I appreciate that, those who believe that. But yeah, I think that experience, it was great because at the same time, you kind of, obviously everybody has someone to answer to, but you kind of answer to yourself, in regards to, like, hopefully you do, as far as, like, at least I was, to be able to design the room, to map out the logistics, and everything, make sure everything was aligned, and was equivalent and compliant is the word I'm looking for with the essentials text, the NSCA standard and guidelines and things of that nature. So it was and then of course, like, just the scheduling was a monster, but now, even now, like, being back at a small college here at Wofford, we only have 1,800 students, give or take, and just mapping out the logistics and everything. Like, I still use the same template, blocking out everything, and when just how things flow. Because at a college versus a university, we don't have a graduate program, so classes are offered one time a day typically, and then so it's an academically driven school. So guess where athletics is on the back burner, So you gotta stay fluid like water. So those experiences, again, like, they're unique. And then even in interviews subsequently after I left Stillman, that was one thing that really stood out to employers, where they were like, I see you built the program from the ground up, and not a lot of coaches can say that. So, and especially if those programs go on to be successful. Obviously, I know we're in a service industry, and we're here to serve, and we're a support staff. But again, we're definitely vital. I always like to equate it to, like, strength and conditioning is kind of like your heartbeat. You don't notice it until something's wrong. So but it's vital. You got to have a good strength coach. Got to have a good strength and conditioning program. So yeah, I love my time at Stillman, and whoever is following said footsteps to building a program from the ground up, enjoy it. And
Team Builder is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for online software for strength coaches. It does not matter what sector of strength and conditioning you work in, you want to get Team Builder because you will be able to program for your athletes, simply distribute the training to them, and make changes, modifications, whatever you need. I've been utilizing them since 2019 when I was back at Towson. I still use it in person at Goldfinch with all my remote clients throughout the country, and in person at the high school, Centennial High, right down the road when I was volunteering for them. You got to check out Team Builder in the link down below. The people that work for them are former strength and conditioning coaches, so they get it. They are able to help you with all of your needs. Again, reach out to your Team Builder rep and learn more about them in the link down below.
Yeah, you're going to take away an experience that very few people can brag about.
All right, so flip side then, you stepped into overseeing 20 sports at Wofford. How did you create a unified department culture by still giving individualization that teams need? Because we know we need to do that, but at the same time, when you come in, you've got all those things going on, and you need to get everybody doing the things the right way and doing it together. So how do you handle that duality and that dichotomy, as Jocko would call it?
That honestly, it was everybody kind of, like, again, leaning on the Stillman experience. Everybody wants you to have. Everybody thinks they want that football environment, in the weight room. So everybody thinks they want that energy until they get that energy, and then it's, and I'm, typically kind of like I'm an energetic guy. I'm not a juice head necessarily, but I'm gonna bring some energy, especially in my older years. Like I said, I'm Unc and OG now, evidently. So in my later years, I'm not really as high of a juice guy, but I'm definitely a high energy guy. So bringing that, say for example, like cross country, when I, coming in and and I'm, hey, let's get it. And they're kind of looking at you like you got a horn growing out of your head. It's a little different, but learning the dynamic between for each and every sport and how they take you. For a lot of people, like when I came in, guns are blazing, especially here at Wofford, that energy was very, very intimidating because, let's just be honest, it's an affluent school. These kids come from like an affluent background, come from a little money. So they, that kind of energy and bravado was like, what in the world is this dude doing? Like, I play tennis. Like we don't do that on the court, So so it was, and then so since then I think it's kind of like the legend of Coach Swift has kind of trickled down from class to class about being kind of like, I guess I'm intimidating evidently. I thought I was a pretty nice guy. And then somebody said it was because of my size, and I'm knocking on 6 foot. I'm like 275 right now. I mean, I look the part a little bit, but I'm not just massive. But anyway, just managing like the experiences and the kind of the vibe of each team is very important. You kind of almost have to reflect it a little bit, but at the same time, not lose yourself. And of course, we're like chefs. The coaches are going to come in, and they're going to want certain things for their team. So that's going to be important. But once they give you their order, it's up to us to do the cooking. So like putting that all together, is always a challenge, and that's the fun part. That's why I'm absolutely addicted to this industry, and I can't see me doing anything else.
I feel that to my core. I actually got my balls busted by the guys when I was at Harvard because they're like, hey, you're training, I think it was tennis as well. They're like, you're training tennis as if it's football max out squat day. Can you just chill out, please?
Yeah. Got that a lot. And but honestly, like, especially on max day, like they appreciate it, after a while. Like at first it's intimidating, but then they get a sense of pride and they're like, yeah, I do want to try to go. I can do more. I'm going to try to do more, versus like, I'm just going to do just enough, but yeah, I think eventually, we all get to know each other and kind of, I can bring it down and they can step it up and we kind of meet each other where we are, and it works out to be a beautiful relationship.
All right. So then what are same people that are listening? They're like, okay, maybe they're not building something from scratch, but they're overseeing 20 sports. They're in these leadership positions. What are typical first 90-day priorities for you that you would then instill to other people?
I'm gonna give. It might sound kind of gimmicky or cheesy, but I have 3 A's. It's analyze, assess, and apply. So we come in, we analyze, basically seeing like what's right and what's wrong within the program. Usually using a SWOT theory or SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to see again like kind of having a logical, quantitative, dare I say, approach to seeing like what it is that we can do, and what it is like again, what may be wrong, what was a detriment. And of course, you get that feedback I usually get feedback from coaches, athletic trainers, and definitely the student athletes about their previous experience or previous regime. If I'm obviously coming in on the heels of another coach, what they liked, what they didn't like, what was effective, what was not. Then it comes the assessment, basically seeing like, how can I apply my pillars into the program? Not everything sticks. So for example, I'll use, when I was at South Alabama, I was a big triphasic guy. So like triphasic may not, and I felt like I just learned about it. I think Cal Beast might have just came out with it. I could be wrong. This is like around like the 2014 era. I left Stillman and went to South Alabama. So it was like around 2014. So I was like, man, this is the greatest thing ever, but it was the greatest thing ever for track because it's undulating. Yeah. But it wasn't necessarily the best thing for like, other sports, for example. So, so like being in that realm, I think like it helped a lot, so like being understanding like, again, like how can I apply what it is that I like to do, or maybe I'm strong at to the program is going to be most beneficial. And then of course, the last A will be applying. So again, actually applying those concepts, again, kind of going back to the previous question of like my energy, like how can I, like these kids are comfortable. Like, hey, I got, they're about to get a dose of Coach Swift. Swift Daddy Dollars is about to bring it for you. You got to get my alter ego. Swift Daddy Dollars is here, so, stuff like that. Like, again, you kind of know, like, okay, I can be a little bit more loose. I can be a little more reserved, or this is more like a player or peer led team, so I can kind of step back some. Whatever that dynamic is. So that's usually how, like, within the first 90 days. And then of course, being here, coming to Wofford, one of the first things I did outside of those three things was how can I integrate some sports science in here? So like getting some velocity based training was huge. I was just leaving Warren Central High School where we had push, which I really hate that they switched up their thing. I really liked what they were doing. It was very affordable, and the kids even at Warren on the high school level absolutely loved it. It was easy to understand.
Hawkin Dynamics is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Not only am I using it now in the private sector at Goldfinch, I was utilizing this software when I was back at Towson University. You're able to transport the plates because I've taken them from our private sector facility to our other locations. Also been able to take it from our private in-person location to the high school down the road to do some testing with athletes right then and there. You're able to pair your true strength with the striking difference machine. The people at Hawkin are fantastic. The technology is second to none. You have to learn more about Hawkin Dynamic in the link down below.
They flocked to it. We had that thing rolling. And that was my first experience. I take that back because at Purdue we had elite form. So I wanted to bring that on. And then when I got here, there was none at Wofford. And we were fortunate. Now we rock with V-True. So those are my things. Again, analyze, assess, apply, and then sports science. We try to push everything on the cutting edge. We want to be up to date with the latest trends in the business. As you know, it's not rocket science, but it is a science. And we try to stay up to date. And that science changes every day. So that's kind of how we approach things.
You teed up Warren Central perfectly. So going from there back into college, what surprised you? And I'm saying this because we mainly have strength coaches going from college to high school, sometimes from high school to college. I got a buddy of mine that's in the process of doing that. Either way, college to high school to college. Talk about it because you've done
it. It was for me. I loved Warren about being there. I would say this I'm trying to go in too far of a tangent. I came, I left Purdue, and a lot of people, always ask, like, why'd you leave, at the time a Power 5 institution to go to a high school? And the short answer is that they opened up the bag. They paid me. They reset my market. They wanted me bad. And to put it in context, it wasn't that Purdue wasn't paying. It was the fact that, this is right during the pandemic, the Big Ten, hey, we're not playing football. We are going to play football. That whole thing, cutbacks. People were, obviously laid off, during the quarantine.
All of it, yep.
Yeah, furloughed. So, and we got furloughed. So, and I got a wife and three beautiful daughters, and so I'm in a house full of women. Women come with accessories. I had some mouths to feed and some clothes to buy. So, leaving there and going to Warren, when he told me how much money he was gonna, they were willing to pay, I was like, all right. But man, I got my stuff pushed in, man. That first day, those kids, was different. They it was honestly that the interpersonal relationships. A lot of those kids, those freshmen, hadn't been in in-person classes in 3 years. So that development that they were way behind. And man, we're in the weight room. I got kids swinging from the pull-up bars. In the middle of a squat, going in between racks. I'm like, yo, you can't do that. You know how dangerous that is. So stuff like that. That was again experience. That I've had to help me grow a lot. But leaving from Warren, eventually, once time went on, and kids got used to each other, being back around each other, what have you, coming back to college, for me, it was Saturdays. It was Saturdays on the sideline in the fall. My daughters, this is all they've known since they've been alive was, being in strength and conditioning, moving, and then of course, Daddy being, them being in the stands, on Saturdays in the fall, and then, me on the sideline. And then, so like when I was in high school at Warren, then, being at home, they're looking at me and I'm looking at them, and it was like, yeah, man, Daddy's home, Daddy's gonna fire up the grill, watch some football. And it was like, you don't have a game today? We're going to the game, and they got like cheerleading outfits and pom-pom. Like, nah, Daddy don't do that anymore. And it's kind of like, So it was like, for my family, it was different, so I really, and for me, it is my drug, being on the sideline on Saturday, I get to let everything out. I get to be who I am. I love WWE ever since I've been alive. So a lot of people say that I missed my calling. Like that's what I should have done. My ankles and my knees would say otherwise, but I get to be that guy on Saturdays. I get to let it all out. I don't care who's around me, who's watching. So for me, it was college football on Saturdays, and I played at this level, at the FCS level, at Tennessee Tech, and so like there's something about it. It's a difference. I love Saturdays. I love college football. Period. And there was an atmosphere, win, lose, or draw at Purdue. The atmosphere was crazy. That fan base was absolutely like intoxicating. So Saturdays in the fall is what brought me back to college football because I missed it so much. But just the actual getting back in the weight room, there's a lot of comparisons, honestly, and I can't remember his name now. So if he's watching, I hope he forgives me. But the guy who preceded me at Warren did an absolutely amazing job setting the baseline. So like the clean techniques, for example, I know a lot of people don't want to teach high school kids a clean technique or cleans or Olympic lifts, period. Yeah. And it's too hard. I just say to that, you just don't know how to teach it because it was easy for me, and shout out to the late Tom Cross. That's who I got my USAW through. And he absolutely buried me when I got my USAW cert. And the way that we learned it, like I still carry that with me to this day, and it's been automatic. So coming from going from Warren to back to college football, it wasn't that hard. The hardest thing was probably kind of gauging talent, and I say that because of where I am. Because when I first got here at Wofford, we got, again, academic school. We got a lot of guys who were straight weight room guys. You know what I mean? Like guys who, yes sir, no sir. Hey, there's a brick wall. All right, I want you to run through it. Yes sir. All right, get on the football field. All right, this guy would get bodied. You know what I mean? Like the talent just wasn't, just great weight room guys. But we've been fortunate to get a lot more talent here over the years. So it hasn't been that big of a challenge. Again, just because I guess for me, I've been through it. But in the weight room, I would say Warren. Honestly, I guess I'm kind of spoiled because Warren wasn't that tough for me either. Because we had, again, the guy who preceded me laid a good foundation. Squat technique was really good. Again, Olympic lifts was pretty okay. We kind of tightened it up a little bit, but each one reach one, teach one. We had a lot of kids who just kind of taught the younger kids how to do things. So yeah, I've had it. I guess you can say I've been spoiled.
I've been saying it to coaches a lot more recently, from working at the high school up the road and with the middle school, high school kids that I work with in the private sector. You ain't ever coached. You try to teach a kid how to RDL that has no idea how to RDL.
Oh man, you said something there. Yeah, that's a
like squatting is so much like people are like, no. Give them a dumbbell, goblet squat, no problem. They can go to a front but you try to teach them like, hey, your knees don't bend. You don't squat this. It's actually like, oh my God.
Man, listen, the freshmen we get to this day, as Deontay Wilder say, to this day, it is that don't squat with the RDL is like, how do you not get this? You said something there.
Okay, so with back to the high school real quick.
Powerlift is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for exercise equipment. Made here in the USA, right down the road in the state of Iowa, Powerlift has the ability to customize whatever you need in your room, regardless of the sector of strength and conditioning. If you need a massive, big room, they have the ability to help you with that. If you're confined with space and you need to get creative, their reps are able to help you get what you need done and being able to get any customizations that you or your organization want with your logo on the equipment. Click the link down below to learn more about Powerlift, and if you have any questions about them, please feel free to reach out to us.
Working with multi-sport high school athletes, we have a good population high school strength coaches. Some of them have multi-sport, some of them are specializing. Logistical things, how did you go about dealing with anybody that was multi-sport? They were always in season, multiple days, like what are your kind of big rock pillars? And every coach is going to have to adjust based off of where they live. But what were kind of your big tried and true periodization things that you could hang your hat
on? Honestly, like this is a great question too. Because I would say, like, I'm honest, this is what I'm probably most proud of. Because it took me a while, but once it came to me and it started clicking, like I was really proud of it. But what we did, because we had a class for basically athletes, they would take a strength and conditioning class throughout the day. It would be like obviously one period. It was a 50-minute period. So they would come in, and what I would have on the projector, it was on the wall. I would have in season, off season, and then preseason. So workouts. So in season would be in white. Colors were the same here: black, white, and gold. So in season would be in white, off season would be in black, and then gold would be preseason. And so again, I would list like what sports were in which season. So obviously in season it'd be top priority. All right. So like in the hardest part was keeping those kids who, let's say for example, I had a baseball guy who also played football, and here we are in the spring. He's in season baseball, and he sees his football teammates, in class, and they're going crazy on cleans and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I could do that, high school machismo, and it's like, hey, no, buddy, come on back. You got a game in 2 days. You're a pitcher. Like, last thing I need is, coach coming to me wondering why, you sprained something or hurt something because, you're trying to max out on clean. So, so for in-season sports, let's say, for example, like if I set it up, because I run the tier program. So if clean is my first lift, in-season sports will do like a clean pool, and then the other two groups will do, of course, a clean, a floor clean, I should say. Let me be specific. So, and sometimes I may give them players' choice depending on like a training age, whether or not they want to do a clean pull from the floor, or they want to go from the hang, depending on their preference. Basketball players, they of course they enjoy coming from the hang position. So, and then for like the lower body exercise, lower body tier, that will come next. Again, the preseason and postseason, they will be on back squat. Actually, take that back. The off-season sports would be like on because I progressed it. The off-season sports would be on the front squat, and then our preseason sports would be on the back squat, and then our in-season sports would do some kind of like single leg squat. Whether it be at the time, it could be like a Bulgarian. I don't know if that's politically correct. Can I say that?
I don't. That's what I call it. Call it a Bulgarian rear foot elevated. Okay. Like potato. You know what I mean?
All right.
Just like, I mean, we called it an RDL, which is a Romanian deadlift. Some people freak out and call it
I just want to make sure. I always wondered that. I don't know. Again, OG here.
I'm not the guy to ask because I think the same way as you.
So we would do that. They would do some kind of unilateral squat, and then for our upper body tier, depending on the sport, it may be like a dumbbell, single arm dumbbell, low incline for the in-season sports. All season they'll be on bench, for example, and that's just kind of like a random template there. But what would probably change would be our off season and preseason sports. Depending on the frequency, they would do our PAP, so like their low body exercise. They would contrast with a max effort sprint. But our in-season sports, they would do some kind of plyometric instead, and that's just more so again, kind of almost catering to what the coaches wanted. It wouldn't be. I mean, these kids are in the prime of their lives. They wouldn't be taxed. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, they could go. And then once you got them out of the mindset of, especially like who was it? It might have been basketball players, and maybe not really. Honestly, it wasn't even baseball. But some guys like they would come. Oh, I got a game today, and I can't do this. Hey, look, this is what we're gonna do. Remember that RPE scale that we had? All right, this is where I want you. So look, it's class. You still got to participate. So that was a little difficult, but once they learned the RPE and stuff like that, and then especially this is where the VBT came into place and made it so fun. I even took away the RPE just a little bit and just gave them speed zones, like where I want you to be, and they flocked to it, and that drove like competition, of course, because now they want to again the machismo kicked in. So that's how I set it up at Warren, and it was on autopilot. It was a great thing. So that I'm honestly tear my rotator cuff, patting myself on the back here. Like I'm pretty proud of myself doing that. See ya, infraspinatus. We're out of here. But yeah, that's how I approached it. Those multi-sport, those athletes.
I think that's huge too, though, because like you just said, it's still class. Like you gave them a logistical thing, but then also understanding, hey, this is a simple way to break it up. You gave them the progressions and regressions. So anybody listening to that, like you need to. He very quickly rattled it off because he's clearly understands progressions and regressions of the movement. You need to know why you're doing the movement. That's the method. With the principle behind it, like he said, was some sort of horizontal push, whether it was a single arm low incline or a barbell bench. That was his horizontal push category. Right. Know your categories, know your progressions and regressions, and that's how you can do a great job serving your athletes.
Yeah, I got to shout out Mike Boyle early on in my career. I used to listen to his podcast all the time, especially when I was in pro baseball and being on the road. Like, knowing the progressions and regressions, again, like I know he At least, I haven't listened in a while. I don't know if he still hates the back squat, the bilateral
he
back
does.
squat, but
He hates both. He hates both.
But that's something I was like, I agree with him on 99% of everything he says, except for that. I'm gonna always squat, and we're gonna bilateral, we're gonna squat. If it ain't front squat, it's gonna be a back squat, and depending on time of year, we're gonna do one or the other. So,
you could do both too, like especially if you train 4 days, like 4 days a week. And to anybody out there that really does hate the goblet squat, we're not going to change Mike Boyle's mind, but it's like if you can goblet squat 100 pounds and that starts to get heavy, let's just put 100 pounds on the barbell and put it on your back, and let's just start there. You know what I mean? Like, and then maybe we go to 105, 110. And you work your linear periodization that way.
Yeah, it comes in huge, especially like again, because I do tier. Sometimes you have to cycle back, and depending on like the modalities that we have in the weight room, we'll do like a heavy front box squat, for speed, for our subsequent tiers. It wouldn't be our main lift, but for our lower body development, we're going to front squat, even though our main lower body movement would be the back squat for that time of year.
Vitruve is the trusted VBT source for Strength Coach Network, and I have been utilizing this for years at Goldfinch, and I'm going to continue to utilize it because the great price for the encoder, as well as the accuracy with the data. Whether I'm measuring average, peak, or any other metric, if I want to include range of motion, fatigue loss during the set, intra-set, whatever it is, I can trust Vitruve. And they are continuing to push the needle and continuing to educate coaches on best practices within the VBT world. Not only do they live in that VBT world, but now they've come out with their new hub. And if you want to learn more about the hub and how it can help you with all of your athletes that you are working with, as we are starting to do this at Goldfinch for our middle school all the way up to college athletes, check them out in the link down below.
You'll appreciate this. One time during 2013, maybe 2014, Joel Welsh and I, we were working at Iowa together, and we ran a Smolov cycle of back squat. And the accessory movement we paired with it was like I think it was one of the Bulgarian like front squat. I was like, why are you doing this? He's like, cause. I was like, well, I'm not going to do this one. I'm the new guy on staff. I'm not going to I'm not going to be soft. You're not going to sure. Looks like we're going to do this together. Yeah. So we would like front squat was the accessory to back squat for, you know what I mean? And we were both okay.
Hard work, brother. Hard work.
So anybody out there, they might not be familiar with this, but you work with Darius Leonard before he became NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. What stood out about him early on, like habit-wise, not only just the physicalness, but like habit-wise for our strength coaches to hear like, okay, this is what elite people do, and that's kind of the standard to hold athletes to?
It was his motor. You know what I mean? Because he was never the biggest guy. I mean, even if anybody can remember, obviously he just recently retired officially. But he was never the biggest guy. But his motor, his drive, and his determination was like something that couldn't be trained or could be. It never wavered. Obviously that's what made him who he is, being an undersized linebacker. I mean, eventually a very well paid linebacker. But physically, he would hover around, honestly, he would start out, I think the heaviest he got was probably like around 210, like in college at South Carolina State. He got to 210, and honestly, like that was a struggle. And then like by the time the season ended, I think the lightest that he was 185. He was 185 by the end of the season, and he would eat, but he would just be, his motor was just go. And I think even, a few times, like I think during his rookie year, we would text, and I was like, man, you looking kind of small in that jersey, like how much? He was like, yeah, and he dropped it again, typical, just like he did in college. He dropped down to like 185 during his pro day or during the combine. I think he weighed in like around like 220-ish, and I think that's when he strained his quad running at 40. And I think that he just put on too much weight too fast, for his body,
Yeah.
But for him, like again, it was a yes sir, no sir. He would, he was one of those guys you had to reel back, like he would have to be, I would have him, our based off of like your strength, I guess you can say groups, your strength categories, let's say for example, and I'm just throwing out numbers. If his clean was at the time, like it was like 275, you were in this group, if you were, 300 or more, you was in this group, he would hop his butt over here in the big group, he would try to hang with the big boys. I'm like, bro, this is your group over here. He's like, I can do it. You just wasn't gonna. And I was like, after a while, like when he just put 10 toes in the ground and was defiant about like trying to get this weight, and same on bench, same on squat. He was never the strongest, but he was definitely strong for his body. He was categorically strong for his weight, and his relative strength was crazy. And again, that kind of just translated, for him just being like, eventually who he grew to be. But he was he is again my fraternity brother as well, Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So he his enthusiasm was absolutely off the charts. Like we practiced at 6 a.m. I'm fighting for my life already because I just put in 12 hours a day before. But and then they relying on the strength coach, typical stuff like bring some juice, bring the juice. Like I'm tired. You didn't work 12 hours yesterday. So, but I didn't have to because we had a Darius Leonard, and Darius Leonard, I was in charge of music. Hey, coach, I want country on today. All right, well, country it is. We crank up country, and we're in flex, and he's singing to the top of his lungs every single bar, and and he's getting there. He was a spark plug, and honestly, he made my job so much easier just from an energy standpoint, because again, going back and forth, everybody, every team wants that energy, that football environment until they get that football environment. So, yeah, he was definitely one of one.
When you're working with somebody like that, anybody might be wondering, like, how do you train them and keep pushing them that hard when they are that talented? And you like that fine line between doing too much and then you can't do too little to protect them. Like you still got to push them hard and send them to the fire so they're forged, but you got to be razor thin sharp. And I asked this to Justin Lovett before when we were talking about training Aaron Darnold, like, because Aaron's thing was he wanted to do more. And I'm like, Love, how did you handle that, knowing that you had to give him more? But Lord forbid, like you said, if something happens and the coach is like, why do you get hurt doing more? Why were you doing more? Like,
yeah. Shout out to Justin Leonard, my former boss at Purdue. Guy who hired me. No, his intrinsic motivation was so high. Like I didn't have to, like, hey man, I didn't have to pull his teeth. Again, going back, I had to dial him back to try to take care. I had to convince him to take care of himself. And like, so if his shoulder was bothering him, it's, this is week 8, his shoulder's banged up. Everybody's banged up, and his shoulder's, jacked up. All right, man, let's go sing along dumbbell bench press. And he'll do it for a set. And then next thing you know, he's barbell bench press. Like, what are you doing? I'm all right. Like, all right, I tried. So in that regard, I have to say I'm spoiled. So I didn't have those problems. I did have those problems when I was in, with the Seattle Mariners, however. But that was archaic baseball, mentality back then. So, but yeah, he was again one of one. He was somebody I didn't have to pull teeth. He wanted it. And I think he knew earlier on that he was different, regardless of the size. I honestly, admittedly, didn't think that he was as different as he turned out to be. I knew he was different. Like watching him on film and watching him play, I knew he was different, but I didn't think that he was, second round different. And then when I saw realizing I'm talking to every team in the league, and I'm like, oh man, I got like all 32 teams in my phone. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, I think we got something.
I guess he's pretty good.
I get pretty good. Guy can go.
You also coached Jeff Henderson, who became an Olympic gold medalist. What about his qualities that made him different from, say, Darius, or were there similarities? What do you see?
He was honest. He was a lot like Darius. Again, he wasn't. Both of them were not afraid to march to the beat of their own drum. And I say that like again, how sport or team dynamics are like. You're going to have your cliques. With Darius, I think he was a little bit ADHD. Like he was always wired. I would hear stories about him just staying up all night. You know what I mean? Just because he was bored. So he needed to stay stimulated. And then, and then be ready to go again at 6 a.m. But, wouldn't miss a beat, didn't get in trouble, made great grades, not a problem. Jeff, his mom, she passed away from Alzheimer's. And I think that was his driving force. Like, he comes from nothing, comes from dirt, in Arkansas, very poor. And, he was just driven, really, really quiet, really, really quiet. But he was different too. Like God bless these guys, with some talent. And how a lot of times you get athletes who are super talented but no work ethic, and that's what makes these guys elite. Especially coming from small schools and maybe even unknown backgrounds or what have you. Like those guys took their talent and they absolutely made the most of it. They squeezed it for everything that that it was worth. And Jeff would he would work out. He would stay longer. He would come for extra workouts. This is at Stillman. So this before I had wife and kids. So I had the time. But we would, we would go. I'm like, hey, what do you need? And especially like when he on the heels of his Division II national championship, or I should say on the forefront, when he was preparing for that. I would get a lot more feedback. He helped coach me on just like how to kind of monitor. I would have something planned, and it'd be like, man, Coach Good, who's the track coach, would have, he absolutely he smoked us today. You know what I mean? So like, all right, well, I got to dial it back, or okay, I want to crank it up today. So it was undulating in that aspect too. So like, again, he's single-handedly by far the most powerful athlete I've ever been around, and I'll say that hands down. And I got punched in the chest by George Karlaftis, who, if you're listening to this, I want some money. I wanted some compensation, because I used to have to wear the chest protector for pregame, and he would just absolutely tee off on me. So I want some compensation because he just got a new contract too. But anyway, Jeff, I'll never forget. I'll tell this quick story. Like I had bands. We were doing like just our modified or our sled pulls. So I'm holding on to the band, and I'm like, okay. At the time, I'm 250. So I'm a pretty strong guy, So anybody else, this guy absolutely yanked me out of the ground, and I'm pulling with all 250. And I'm hunkering down, and I'm like, my pride and my ego is like high. I'm like, man, anyway, we're like, no matter how hard I tried to hold him down, he absolutely just drugged me. I'm talking like, and it was almost effortless for him. So I was like, oh yeah, this dude here is like, I've never seen, hand time. Clocked him at a 4.2. It was like a high 4.1 one time. And of course, again, like I knew, like, oh, this dude he ran like a 10.2 in the D2 national championship. And again, it was cakewalk, But again, because he's Olympic caliber. He goes on to win Olympic gold medalist in Rio, 2016 in the long jump. So, those guys are one-on-one.
Dasher Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for timing gates for your athletes. Whether you're trying to run A-cells, curve, flies, change in direction with the Pro Agility, the 505, modified 505, whatever you want to do, get valid and reliable setup with your Dasher. I had the black, the blue, and now we have the silver at Goldfinch. We're completely moving over from the blues to just only having the silvers. I only test my athletes on the silvers because it has helped me save so much time, whether I'm going from Ankeny over to Nevada or Ankeny over to Huxley, whatever I got to do. I save so much time, and I want you to be able to save so much time with your setup because we know that time is precious as strength coaches. Now, not only are you going to be able to save time, but you're going to be able to save money with this great product, and you have a valid and reliable product that has run through countless different articles, as you continue to see online being published with the accuracy of this information. So, if you want to learn more about Dasher, click the link down below to be able to go to their website and learn more about them.
And now, again, couple that with my experience as being, building a program from the ground up. Not a lot of people can say that, they've had the experiences that I've been blessed with.
I don't think enough people like working with track and field is so much fun. Got to do it at Towson.
It is.
And especially like you said, if you have that great relationship, A, with the athletes, but B, with the coach, like even if the coach is like, hey, you know what, man, we had a plan and I wasn't going to smoke them, but son of a gun, I am. You know what I mean? And you're like, all right, cool. Like, are we going to continue this overreach in the weight room, or are we going to just pull back and be smart? Right?
Yeah.
But having that stopwatch sport where it's like, how far did the thing go? How fast did they run? And when you are a direct part of what happens, because it's not strategy like games, it makes you such a darn good coach.
It does. Yeah. That is a home run statement right there, because it really does make you a better coach. And especially it carries, there's a little bit of a carryover because, again, like just based off of the feedback of other sports and other athletes in other sports, I should say, like you can kind of modify and you kind of identify like, okay, well, this guy needs this and this guy needs that. Especially this was like when you don't have GPS, let's say, for example, or catapult, like getting that feedback and then like, okay, versus a kid who's saying like, oh, we got smoked today. And it was something that was pretty slight. You can kind of use measurables where they'd be like, like a RSI test or, just like looking at just a, perception. And I never really put a whole lot of stock in surveys, depending on unless I got that relationship, getting that feedback from the athlete. You can still kind of monitor and like, okay, this is where we need to go to kind of, again, get the most out of the athlete in that present time in that during that session. So yeah, like I love track. I love like programming for track. It's because especially if you got a knowledgeable track coach.
Yes.
Like that's a big caveat too. So like, mirroring the communication, painting the picture. And once you get it and it clicks, I'm a nerd in case anybody hasn't caught on yet. So I love the science behind that. Just complementing each other. So yeah, track is fun.
I was blessed to work with a great head coach, Mike Jackson, who, like led from the top, and with the cross country and throws coaches, like our throws coaches, when we'd sit down at the calendar, I had 3 of them over 3 years, because they'd leave and go to a Big Ten university because we did well. Right.
Yeah,
and I'd always be like, hey, okay, what are the meets that matter? They'd look at the schedule and be like, the ticket circle, conference championship. I was like, that's it. He's like, yeah, no, we're training. Like, that's the only one that matters. Like, they can train and they can throw sore. I don't care. That's where we're going to peak. So if you can get it right, it's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of your non-negotiables? Let's talk in X and O's as we're here. Non-negotiables in a yearly training model for, again, high level, the different sports. You can niche into whatever one you want. What are some of those kind of things that have to happen in terms of technical coaching and programming stuff?
Obviously, definitely we have to test. There has to be some baseline tests. We want to have some measurables. Got to quantify everything, and I feel like that needs to be said. You would think that that's obvious, but it is definitely not. I've come across some coaches who do not test. I feel like in order to know where you're going, you got to know where you come from, and you got to show how effective your programming is. So testing it is number one. Number two, obviously, it kind of goes without saying, is effort. Athletes, you got to come in with some effort. Like that's up to you. You determine it. Even Nick Saban can't make you work harder. That's up to you. So as far as like actual templates or I should say staples, squat, there's gonna be some kind of squat pattern. Now I say that again, we kind of talked about it already. Not everybody back squats. So when I had cross country, we didn't back squat at all. We front squatted. And with our throwers last year, and I kind of go back and forth. Our throwers last year, I didn't back squat them at all. I front squatted them until they absolutely begged me to allow them to back squat, because that's what they liked, and they have done so well. I feel like they earned it, so I gave them the choice. So this thrower's choice on that. But we're gonna squat somehow, some way. Like you're definitely gonna squat. Not everybody bench presses, so that's a variable. So in my old age, that's a hill that I'm no longer willing to die on. So for example, like softball, like our pitchers, they floor press now, but they do not bench press. I think that they can, but again, there are other minds who think otherwise. Again, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. Same thing with clean. They don't, I don't clean softball anymore. I think that they should. Some think they shouldn't. Again, not a hill I'm willing to die on. We can get triple extension in other ways. So, and thanks to VBT, I can measure it. I get what I need. Everybody's happy. So those are the big things. Again, I still stick with doing triphasic training. I'm not triphasic, but the tier model with all my sports. It's just the exercise selection is going to change from sport to sport. Not everybody does everything. I try to get, because I do have ADHD, so I hate to sit there for 4 weeks and look at the exact same program. It is absolutely torture for me. I'm changing to something. Our main lift may stay the same, but we're going to change something. So again, going back to your point, some kind of regression or progression from that movement. So yeah, that's pretty much our non-negotiables. Like, we're going to kind of stick to that. I'm really big on 5-3-1 right now for the all season. I just got into that for years. I know some people are like, yeah, where you been? Like, for years, I kind of went back and forth, and I was like, I don't know. I fell in love with APRE, and APRE was like a home run, especially at South Carolina State. But man, like, I don't know, we did 5-3-1 this year, last off season, and we did a boring but big program with football, and it was a home run. These guys loved it, and we saw like some big jumps. I would say they would probably rival what we got when we did APRE. So, which helped me learn again, in my old age, that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Obviously. So yeah, I'm if you can't tell, I like to experiment with a lot of different things. That's part of the fun. When you've been doing this for 19 years, you gotta keep it fresh. So
when you have athletes, the best program for them is the one that they're not on, and especially when it's rooted in like science and actual good research, and other people have done it. Like, it's a great refresher course, especially if you're not just slapping them with too much volume or too much intensity. Like, if it's dosed appropriately, just like any other medicine that you give to them or training, that new training stimulus is going to be exactly what they need to elicit that change. And if you're doing these basic things with advanced athletes that have a high training age, it almost can serve as like a reset, for lack of a better term. And we would do something similar in those early offseason phases with some of our most superior athletes. Sure, for maybe a shorter amount of time, 2 to 3 weeks, but it would be, like you said, chef's kiss, great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I didn't. Dennis Love, D Love over at Clemson. He is when we were on the Purdue staff together. He was the first guy I learned microdosing from, and kind of and just his way of thinking.
Player Data is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for GPS technology, and it's simple. The price you cannot beat, and the validity and accuracy of their technology is second to none. The price is outstanding. Go ahead and reach out to them to learn more about the pricing specific to you and however many units you're going to get. And then the validity. Player Data has been tested and run through FIFA's validation process for FIFA to then be utilizing Player Data technology. FIFA, we all know that name. They would not be utilizing a product that cannot live up to the competition and cannot be able to provide real, live, and accurate data. Player Data is able to do this. Not only do they have great software and hardware, but I know that the customer service is fantastic because I have worked with these individuals before. Click the link down below to learn more about Player Data.
And he's a mad scientist, by the way. So he should, if you don't know him, anybody not know him, you need to get to know him. All right, Dennis Love, D Love at Clemson. So so that when you go back to like the microdosing, like that was honestly very transformative in my career as learning how to do it and how to do it right. And it kind of just honestly gradually, especially when it comes to return to play, it was absolutely, again, very transformative and very helpful. So I love that concept. I love the microdose again. And it also helps me because I'm always thinking, ahead too.
With your large staffs and rosters, how are you structuring staff, interns, daily workflow? I had Peter Ken on at SMU talking about like this type of higher level stuff for our higher level coaches that are having to see things and the pieces communicating. How do you help put that watch together, for lack of a better term?
So whenever since I've been here since 22, my associate or my first full-time assistant is what I'm trying to say, Gavin Hopkins, he and I came in basically a month apart. Our interns, 2 intern positions, obviously, we've had basically a revolving door, as they should be. It's an intern position. Yep. And so based on their background, whether it be like them as a former athlete, hopefully on the college level or just their previous experience, I may pair them with that sport. I try to challenge them by putting them with the sport that they may be familiar with, and then a sport that they have absolutely no idea how to even approach it. For example, we have rifle here at Wofford College. You wouldn't think that rifle would be in the weight room. Rifle is in the weight room at Wofford College. So people are like, what in the world do you do with rifle? Great question. We're going to figure it out together. So we can learn. Again, that's where you bridge that gap and you're going to kind of pick their brains and kind of learn from them. But basically, that's really how I do it with those 2 positions. In regards to myself and G-Hop is what we call him, Coach Hopkins, we basically get our pick of the litter. We're full-time. We're going to be here. So it's like, hey, this is a sport we're going to work with. Obviously, being a director, I'm going to have football. You know what I mean? So coming out of the gate, I forgot TJ. TJ Bell is our strength coach for both men's and women's basketball. So those are his sports. Those are the only 2 sports that he works with. But again, kind of he's full time as well. Neglected to mention it.
That's a bunch of responsibilities outside. Like when you're in basketball, you're sometimes a nutritionist. You're helping out with rehab.
Because
anybody that doesn't know, that's what life in FCS basketball is.
Yeah. He does operational duties as well. Especially on the road. So, he's tackled a lot. That's the reason why he doesn't have any hair. So I hope he sees this and he knows that I'm making fun of his hair and lack thereof. But yeah, nonetheless, I try to match them up with personality, background, and then I give them some kind of place. I don't want our developmental staff, in this case our interns, or really even my associate, put them in a position where they're too comfortable, where they don't see a challenge. And that's the reason why we sit and we have staff meetings. We have everything on our OneDrive, so they have to share their programs with me. So I know that what's going on. Questions come up from coaches. I can go back and be like, I can point to, basically act as that bridge and be able to say oh, this is a rhyme and reason why they did X, Y, Z.
No, and that's super smart. Like having the SharePoint to be able to function and flow, like Peter just talked about it before, is if you do have to fill in for a staff member, say he's traveling with men and women basketball, you need to be able to know what anything else is going on, be able to speak the same language, or Lord forbid, somebody has to be out and you're filling in for a staff member. You all now need to have that shared language. So it's just, it flows seamlessly.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What about any young strength coach that maybe came through and they're going to intern with you? They're going to work with you. What do you want them to walk away having mastered after being at Wofford?
Autonomy. One word, like autonomy. Because like I'm not gonna hover. Again, you see the gray hair. I've had gray hair since I was 16, and I looked at a picture when I was at Purdue, and I'm like, God Almighty, what happened?
Just had more of the gray hair.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere. But autonomy. So you gotta learn how to fly solo. You know what I mean? I got enough on my plate where I don't want to get involved. One of my former ADs, I had a quote. He said, "If both of us are doing the same thing, then one of us is not needed." Amen. So you know what I mean? Like, hey, like I'm not gonna do your job. That's why you're here. Now there's sometimes that where I have to step in as far as like obviously being a director and kind of nurture, for lack of a better term, younger staff and help develop them. And that's that I understand. I've had to do that a lot more this year with one of our interns, and that's okay because it honestly helps me. Again, I love this stuff. Like I love to nerd out. I love to go back and have to dig through the essentials text. He thought that once he got his CSCS, hey, essentials text, get out of here. Like, no, dude, that's your second Bible. Like, no, like you always keep that. So going back to that, referencing the fundamentals and things of that nature, things that he can't learn from a textbook, things of that nature. That helps us all grow. So yeah, that's pretty much how we're rolling with that.
Working in young strength coaches that sometimes they hear, and you talked about the Mariners, you talked about pro baseball, and they're like, well, yes, coach, that's what I want. I want the pro baseball world. What do you wish more college coaches understood about the unique demands of pro baseball?
I think honestly, like outside of a collegiate baseball coach, honestly, just anybody, how hard the sport is, from a performance standpoint.
Right.
Obviously people,
or just stand in the batter's box with it being thrown.
Oh my gosh. Listen, they thought I didn't play baseball. I always wanted to, but my folks wouldn't let me. And they made me, being, some of the guys made me take BP one time. And I got in there, and let me tell you, it is the scariest thing I ever did in my entire life. Because, for something that comes like this and like it's aiming at your head and then to dip off at the last second, and for somebody to be able to do that from 60 feet away, it's absolutely amazing. Like just the demands of the sport itself. And the fact that you're just up there, can you imagine like somebody left-handed throwing like 90, 95, and this thing is moving all over? Man, get out of here. This is the hardest thing to do. It is the hardest thing to do. It's, and on top of that, like I've seen guys like just get smoked. We had one player, because I worked in the minor league system. One guy he had his orbital bone crushed, from taking 95 to the dome. Like it is scary. You gotta have some intestinal fortitude for that sport. But nonetheless, just for pro baseball, the demands, there's so many of obviously the physical demands. You're doing the same thing, repeatability, having to do the same thing over and over and over again every single day, and then be able to enjoy it and still be locked in and still performing at an elite level. The intangible things, the stressors. In pro baseball, you had the stressor of obviously this is how these guys are going to feed their families. A lot of those guys, we had coming from the Dominican Republic and other countries, this is their way out. They're sending money back home. Like they got to make it. They got people depending on them, and like the stressors of that. Obviously, there's like there's a lot of politics, surrounding that. The politics also, like there's politics everywhere you go. I always remember that. Obviously in college athletics, there's politics, but man, the pros, politics are crazy. You get called into those meetings and you hear about, hey, we're going to release this guy. And I'm like, release him? And obviously I'm a strength coach. I mean, I don't have a dog in the fight, but in your mind, like, why would you, this guy works hard. He's busting his butt. He's got 3 kids to feed. He's doing everything. We just got him, he's working up, you can name off all these things, but it's like, it's a business decision. You know, I mean, you got to do what's best for the organization. You know, so like there's so much that goes on with pro baseball. A lot of people don't know. Like, you know, people think that the goal. I used to think, you know, the goal was to get up there, hit a home run, and it's like, no, that's not what they. Even if you can do it, that's not what they necessarily want. You know, there might be a organizational campaign. They might want to see how you bat against righties, or how you can you put the ball into play. You know what I mean? Like being able to place the ball. You know, same thing with pitchers. You might be able. Everybody knows you have a great fastball, but now as far as your development, thus the reason for the minor leagues, like can you throw an off-speed pitch here, there, whatever. You know, and how do you fare against righties if you're a lefty, and vice versa? You know, righty on righty. However, these different situational things to be able to fit into the obviously the big leagues to help them be able to win in September and October.
What are then some of the lessons from pro baseball that still influence how you coach?
It's not always about the weight room. I would say that I say that because like there was a guy, I can't remember his name. He was from also learned an appreciation, and I say that word loosely, appreciation for people from SoCal. No offense from anybody who's from SoCal, but I'm from Tennessee. You know, I've been in the South, you know, pretty much my whole life. But you know, SoCal people, and then you know, North Cali people, completely different. I learned through baseball, but SoCal people, like I kind of like it and I hate it at the same time. You know, they're brash, they're a little arrogant, they're like in your face. You know what I mean? I had a guy who was like he was just non-compliant. You know, and I had the power to find guys they didn't show up to workouts. You know. And this guy, and I mean, like no matter what I said, like, and it wasn't even my words, you know, I was just a soldier on the ground, you know, I didn't just, hey, relaying information, and he just always chirping, and I'm just like, dude, it's the All-Star break, and I'm just like, this is getting old, like, you know, this is getting old, and I mean, like, it's getting heated, so he's chirping at me, and I'm chirping back, you know, and then, but it wasn't like a guy ribbing you, you know what I mean, like, no, this dude is like, he's saying some stuff that's kind of like, it's kind of pissing me off, you know what I mean? So, and I'm chirping back because, hey, my man ain't raised no coward, you know? So like, you know, I'm a man first. So, you know, we're, you know, John, you know, literally every day. And I'm watching and I'm like, hey, did you do all your sets? And he's like, yeah, I did. Yeah. But then, you know, and then All-Star break comes, and come to find out, like, he was giving me all this. He came and apologized to me. You know, I see the guy, you know, we're in the Southern League at the time, and we were in Birmingham, Alabama. And he's from LA. His family came to see him. His son and his wife came to see him. Completely different guy for the rest of the year. He came to apologize. He was like, "Hey, look, man, I just want to let you know. Like, he gave up like a 6-figure job working for the state of California to pursue a baseball dream. He was basically in a beer league, and a scout saw him pitching, and wanted to give him a chance. You know, so that's what happened. And he had all these pressures." Like from obviously back home, you know, what have you, and ever since I remember seeing him like walking with his wife and with his son. I mean, dude was a jerk, total butthole, like hardest, like and I saw him melt with his son. I was like, oh man, like you know, he's a human being after all. And he came, he was like, yo, Swifty, you know, this, that, and the other, you know, I just want to apologize, you know. So we were good after that. So that lets me know that like sometimes, you know. Sometimes like people have stuff going on outside the weight room, and I think like a lot of times strength coaches get so locked in on sets and reps, you know, barbells and dumbbells that we forget that there's a human being behind the athlete, and that lets me know like you know I've even had that situation here. We had a kid just you know hey you didn't do all your you know all 20 reps you know whatever like some core exercise we were doing, and he just I mean 0 to 10 like hey yo hey. What's going on, man? Like, and come to find out, he had all this other stuff going on. And he came back and apologized. But sometimes it's not about the weight room, and sometimes you know you're not the problem. Other people got stuff going on outside of here.
Okay, so that was pro baseball. What has been the best piece of career advice that you've ever received in your career?
I would say 2 quotes. I'm a big quote guy, so. One was I already said, Dr. Paul Bryant. He's at Alabama A&M now, and I was with him at Stillman and at South Carolina State for a minute. And you know, again, if the 2 of us are doing the same thing, one of us is not needed. And the other one is from Pedro Griffel. I think he's with the White Sox for a minute. He was over the Mariners farm league system when I was there, but lately, most recently, was with the White Sox. Didn't do too well, but nonetheless. he mentioned that if everybody's thinking the same thing, then no one's thinking.
Ooh.
And he said that because, like, again, kind of going back to that click mindset, we had just I'll tie this into strength and conditioning performance. I can't think of his name, but P3 out in California, Dr. Elliott. I can't remember his first name now, but he brought in this programming model, and like, I mean, if you know baseball players, you don't mess up their routine.
No.
Very routine, very superstitious, and it came in and you integrate this brand new program, and it's messed up everything. And like, and Pedro came to me and asked, he was like, what do you think about this new system? And I was like, there's some things I like about it, and there's some things I don't. But everybody, he was like, you're the first person to say something like that. And he asked me for details, and then that's when he dropped the quote on me. But everybody else just felt like, because he's Pedro, and everybody's like, oh man, it's Pedro. I'm like, man, I'm just gonna tell you how. Again, I'm a man first. Like,
you asked me a question, I'm gonna answer.
Right, and I told him, and he was like, that's great. He said, I appreciate your feedback. He's like, because like that stuff is important. But everybody was saying the things, they were scared to buck the system, I guess you can say, to go against the system there, and everybody has to think. We all got to be thinking alike, and it's like, well, that's the reason why we're all here. We're all cogs in the machine, And so ever since then, I've always had that confidence to be able to speak my mind, Now, it ain't always worked out for me.
Sometimes you gotta know, like you said, sometimes you gotta know when to fold them and hold. Like, okay, baseball, like sure, softball you ain't gonna clean, cool.
Yeah, and it's like, no matter what article I can come up with, to your point, and show you how beneficial this is, and how, this is actually the safest thing to do. They're going to more apt to get hurt playing their sport than doing what I'm about to do with them. It's like, again, what hill are you willing to die on, And, I'm just, hey, at the end of the day, I'm trying to do what's best for the athlete the best way I can. That's it. And sometimes I like to think that, hey, I'm the expert. Actually, I know that I am the expert in this field. I'm not out drawing up, cover three. I couldn't draw cover three to this day. I couldn't do it when I was playing college football, because all I cared about was up front. So, because I was a defensive end. So, it's definitely, that's probably what has helped me the most. Those two coaches, and that carried me to this day, and I spread those things on. And I think even with my staff, being younger, a lot of them, especially when they first get here, are kind of afraid to speak their minds at staff meetings, and then it drives me crazy, because I'm like, hey, there's a reason why you're here. Like, and a lot of them, think because, I may think differently, or I may ask a question and I'm telling them that they're wrong. I just want to hear your opinion, your perspective. So, I want to learn from you too.
You teased being a dad, being a husband before. What has been some lessons from parenting that has made you a better coach?
First of all, let me get some brownie points. My wife, if it wasn't for my wife, I definitely wouldn't be able to perform in my job in the caliber or level. She is, when I married her, or even when I was dating, I let her know like what I do, and like, hey, I probably won't be in this job for very long, and then I'll probably, move a lot. And she was like, okay. At the time she was in HR, so that helped out. It worked out a lot, because, we all need HR people, that was before AI. So I think she still got a pretty good mark. She's in recruiting now, but nonetheless, the challenge is being that, first of all, like my daughters, they've grown up in the weight room, and they love coming to work with me. So like they love fitness, love to do things. We're actually thinking about doing like a kids fitness channel, kids strength and conditioning channel on YouTube. Get these kids off of those toy channels and all that stuff. Why not? But nonetheless, the challenge has been obviously time. That would be the biggest one. The work-life balance. There is no such thing as work-life balance at all. It's just, I'm incorporating both worlds,
Work-life integration. Sorry to interrupt you. Kenna Smoke Manisi from Army, when she won the NSCA Assistant Strength Coach of the Year award back in 2024, in her acceptance speech, she said there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life integration. My baseball players have watched my children grow up. My children have been in the weight room. It is, I am who I am here, and I am who I am there. Like, that's the word that I use now.
That's perfect. I'm going to steal that. Yeah.
As you should.
That is absolutely exactly what it is. So, and especially like, going, as my kids get over, my daughters, my oldest is 11. Let me see, they just turned ages. One's 11, the other one's 8, and the other one's 6. My youngest is 6, should be 7 in February. So right around this time, daddy's broke birthdays hit me back to September. Wife's birthday is September, October, then November. Christmas in December. My birthday's in January, which I don't spend any money on me. And then
try to save it up.
Right. Trying to recoup from the tail end of the year. But no, like again, my wife has been an awesome help and an awesome helpmeet and an awesome rib, an awesome teammate. And my daughters, again, they absolutely love what I do. They've never complained. They especially like when they see my female athletes working out, they get to watch them. You know, I'm hoping because right now we're in our artsy mode. Right now, and my oldest, she's playing the flute and she does dance. And all three of them are doing dance right now, which I'm not exactly excited about because again, it's not fun to watch for me. But it's not about me. But it's been fun. Say what now?
It ain't cheap.
Oh no, yeah, that too. Yeah, it's not cheap. Well, nothing is. There's no more parks and recreation. It's free, at least not around here. So that sucks too. So, but it's been great, honestly. Again, I hear these stories, and I say some of them are horror stories. You know what I mean? It definitely takes a toll, but you just got to make it work. And again, like especially I would say probably the biggest challenge would be just being a husband. Making time, especially in the fall. Because you're working 7 days a week, 12 to 14-hour days. And, it's been 6 months since you went on a date, so you try to, carve out a breakfast date there with your wife, but like with the kids, my kids are used to it. I guess you can say again, kind of going back to when I was at Warren, if I have too much free time on my hands, they're kind of looking at me sideways. So yeah, that's kind of how my dynamic is. And then my athletes, they love to see my kids grow up. They've seen them in there, and then especially if they walk in before their session and they're training. My kids are training. We're doing like your basic motor skills and stuff. We're teaching them skip, hop and jump and what have you, and definitely trying to work on some relative strength with some pull-ups and at least some kind of variation of a pull-up. They kind of sit back and it's kind of like and they'll come in, they'll cheer them on and stuff like that too. So it's like it's both of my families, I guess you could say, that are integrated, and I've been spoiled and I've been blessed. So. Blessed beyond merit, blessed beyond measure.
For last two questions here to respect your time. What is the coaching or performance problem you're most obsessed with solving right now? Because you said you're a nerd. You want to what is the thing you're like, I gotta get this right?
These are the best questions ever. It has been in-season programming. In-season programming especially for football. Honestly, it's with everybody, and I think a lot of it, it's my ADHD coming into play because I want to do so much, and especially when I see other coaches doing stuff. And we just renovated our weight room. Shout out to Dynamic Fitness and Strength, renovating our weight room. We had to for 3.5 years, I've been so used to the same logistics of our weight room, and now here we are. This is probably like month 3 or 4. Where now I'm still learning like how to move and what we can do because the things that we used to do, I can't just copy and paste. But it's in season. It's the in season approach where again you kind of struggle with the dynamic of athlete fatigue, coaching demands, and then of course like what you do as far as like your actual pillars. Like one thing I do not. I guess it goes back to your previous question about non-negotiables. We don't maintain in season. No. I hate that word. I hate that mindset. And that's a lot of times the coaches will come in, and that's where I kind of like a coach will be like, "Hey, we're going to maintain, right?" No, not even a little bit. No, we're going to drive strength. We're going to keep trying to get stronger and trying to get more explosive, what have you, within obviously the context.
Yes.
We're not, full depth squatting, 100%, whatever. But nonetheless, we're still going to push that envelope and kind of drive strength in some shape, form, or fashion. Again, goes back to the VBT where that comes into play. But the biggest thing is, again, for me, the biggest challenge has been in-season programming. And this more so, not that I don't know what to do, but I kind of don't know what to do because I want to do so much.
And then the last question, when coaches hear about what you're building there at Wofford, what do you want them to take away from the strength and conditioning, sports performance, whatever word you use, what do you want them to take away from Wofford's identity in the weight room and on the field?
It's Terriers over everybody. One thing has been very, no matter, the record may not show or reflect, but one thing that's been consistent throughout all 4 seasons here, especially with football, is that we're tough. You're a tough team. And I think a lot of that comes by the fact that when they come in the weight room, that they know, I tell recruits in the weight room, we got mirrors in here for a reason. Like you got to be able to have that accountability and that ownership. There's no filter. You may be somebody on Instagram, you can use a filter. On Twitter, you may be another person, but in here, there's no BS, and you ain't gonna get BS from me. It's gonna be straight up, and down. So like what you put in, you control the output, but you may not be able to control the outcome. But when you come in here, we're gonna absolutely bleed every single drop out of you when you come in here, and that's where we go back to, kind of on the heels I did on another podcast. This is the demolition zone. We're all about renovating. We're renovating your bodies. We're literally tearing your bodies down and what have you. But it's not only just your bodies that we're breaking down. It's also your mindset, who you used to be. We want you to grow, because we're growing too. And there's no change that's comfortable. You have to be uncomfortable in here. And I think that translates to the field. A volleyball team, they just won the conference for the third year in a row, three-peat. And so, to be able to do that, especially like what they faced, had a ton of injuries, unfortunately, but yet and still they persevered and won the conference, and the stories like that. Baseball went on a crazy run 2 years ago, almost beat LSU twice in a tourney, and then turned around, LSU came and got some of our guys, so it still must have been pretty good. But nonetheless, we that's what it is. We're tough. We're tough, and we're not going to blink as a program. We're not going to be soft at all. So if you put Wofford on your schedule, you better be ready. You better be ready to know it. Like you're going to feel it when we're done.
Coach, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I could have talked to you all day. Look forward to staying in touch, and this is going to be a fantastic start to 2026. Everybody else has a high bar to jump over.
Absolutely. Love to hear it, Justin. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Yes. Likewise, I can talk to you all day. This is awesome.
Have a great rest of your day, Coach.
You too.
Vacations are meant for you to be outside doing things that you love and reconnecting with your family and your friends and recharging your battery. It is not meant for you to travel and listen to some coach talk in a conference hall and eat some food that you know really isn't the best thing that you want to be eating. Take back your vacations and do so with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. When you purchase an annual membership, you're going to get access to our course, Performance Coaching 101. In the subsequent years, it'll renew and you'll get access to 102 and 103. Each year, you're going to get access to 2 NSCA CEUs and 10 CSCCa CEUs. These CEUs will allow you to be able to learn from the comfort of your office. You'll be able to earn CEUs on your time rather than having to travel. Take back your vacation and be able to do this with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. Click the link down below for more information. Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.